Dear reader, I'm Tony and this is Book Text. I'm doing another Friday Reads video. These are some of my favorites to watch, and so they're becoming quickly one of my favorites to make. But it's been a couple of weeks since I last did one because I lost my voice last week, which is really scary in the middle of a pandemic that has to do with a cough and a sore throat. But I'm okay now. Still just a little bit of congestion, some sinus congestion, but I'm doing okay. But I will cover 2 weeks of Friday Reads today. But first, our word of the day today is the word brontide. It is a noun. It's gorgeous sounding, isn't it? Brontide. It means a low rumble as of distant thunder. So every once in a while I hear a brontide and I get excited because it makes me think that there's a thunderstorm coming my way, and I love thunderstorms. So I have finished 5 books in the last 2 weeks. I really slowed down after the reading rush. I kind of got burnt out of reading specifically 18th century classics. They're hard to get through, and I needed to kind of vary my reading schedule. So I've slowed down a bit, and that's okay. I'm really kind of luxuriating in the books that I'm reading. But of the books that I read Christa Wolf's German book August. This is a very short book. I think in this edition it's 74 pages, but in the paperback, so the 74 pages are only like half pages, and in the paperback I think it's only 38 pages, so it's pretty much a short story or novella. This is the story of a German tour bus driver in his old age, and as he is driving this bus, he's reflecting back on a period of his life right after World War II when he was an orphan and he was recovering in a tuberculosis ward. And kind of the people, especially the children that he met while he was recovering there. It's just a really kind of calm, quiet, slow book. Very tender, I would describe it, tender. Lots of heart, good things in it. I enjoyed it. It was a quick read. It was a translated read. A Woman in Translation, which of course August is, not August, but August the month is the Women in Translation month. So I read this for that and really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars. I also finished my essay collection, I'd Rather Be Reading by Anne Bogel. I was reading one a day, and these were nice, short, easy to read, easy to identify with essays about books and reading. They weren't really super deep or scholarly or heavily researched, but they were enjoyable and even inspirational at times. I kept writing down books and adding them to my TBR on my to read list on Goodreads. So I really enjoyed it. I think I gave it 4 stars. I really liked it. A couple classics that I read. Henry James's The Aspern Papers. This is the story of a con man of sorts who's trying to, he goes in disguise to rent a house from an old lady, and this old lady happens to be his favorite poet's muse when she was younger, and potentially lover, the poet's lover. And so he's trying to sneakily get the personal papers from her. It was really slow, which I think made it more suspenseful. You're wondering the whole time, will he get the papers or not? I enjoyed that kind of intrigue. I enjoyed the Venetian setting. You can see kind of the cover painting. It's set in Venice in the late 19th century, which was just really beautiful, really atmospheric, and it kept me guessing right up until the end. So also, it made me wonder about the legitimacy in which historical papers are acquired, because this was very underhanded. It felt very wrong ethically. But I enjoyed the kind of mystery that it set up. So I gave this one 4 stars as well. Another classic I finished was Maria Edgeworth's Castle Rackrent. This is the story of a family living at Castle Rackrent in the 18th century. as they suffer through generational debt. So several generations of this family have been bad at managing their finances, and they continually suffer from the previous generation's problems. It is told through the point of view of the servant in the household who has witnessed many generations go by. So he's very old by the time he's writing this. There's some really funny things that happen in this story. There's a drunken party. They're dancing on tables. There's a man who attends his own funeral. There's also a man who flips a coin to decide which woman to marry. But there's also some really dark things that happen. For example, one man locks his wife in her room for 7 years because she's Jewish and she protested when he served pork at the table after she asked him not to. And that felt really wrong to me. Very problematic. So it didn't really stand the test of time, but I appreciated it within its context, within its time. So I only gave this one 3 stars because I liked it, but I wasn't madly in love with it. Probably won't read it again. I also finished listening to an audiobook of The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. This is a lighthearted space opera all about crewmates on a ship as they are carrying cargo across the galaxy. It was so good, full of heart, some excitement and intrigue, but not a lot of action, which is what I wanted. I wanted kind of a sci-fi book that was that focused on characters and relationships between characters, more than it was about kind of the really cool concepts of the story or about intergalactic war. And some of those things were present, but they weren't the focus of the story, which was ideal. They really focused on the characters. So this was just the kind of space opera I was looking for. It's the beginning of a series. I think they might be kind of standalones, but they're all together about the same kind of tangential characters, but the same universe, the same setting. So I will continue reading them. I gave this one 5 stars. All right, on to what I am currently reading. I have one leftover from Reading Rush that I want to finish. It is Candide by Voltaire. This was where I really slowed down as I was reading this because I was starting to get burnt out, as I mentioned. This is an 18th century French novel that is a parody of other French novels. It seems to be a parody of kind of French romance, like Charlotte Lennox's The Female Quixote was doing. So I'm trying to read this because I want to compare it to that book, but also to compare it to another book I want to read that I didn't finish for the Reading Rush, which is Henry Mackenzie's A Man of Feeling. So I'm planning to get to those eventually and do kind of a comparison video. This is again a parody, a satirical. It's really dark, kind of funny sometimes, but mostly dark, and absurd. Like this poor man is going through all these horrible things, and it's starting to get a little too close to home. Like, you know how 2020 has been so far. It's starting to feel a little bit like Candide, but I do plan to finish reading this book just slowly. I'm also reading, since I finished my essay collection, I'd Rather Be Reading, I started this essay collection by Alberto Manguel. This is called The Library at Night. And it is a collection of essays about libraries that are very scholarly, so elegantly written, well-researched, really intriguing. Alberto Manguel just has a way with words that makes you fall madly in love with them. So this is so interesting. It really has, so far I have read about how libraries try to create order and organization through the massive amounts of books in the world. And they do help with that order, but sometimes that order creates a bit of chaos because lots of books, most books I would argue, don't fall neatly into categories. And so you kind of create some confusion and some disorder by instilling such strict order. It's really interesting. It's making me think a lot about libraries and the different roles that they play in my life. So I'm enjoying this. It's just a gorgeous, gorgeous book. I love the kind of binding that they did. All right, I'm also continuing to read the Museum of Distance by Ashley Seitz Kramer. This is a poetry collection. I'm reading one essay, one poetry, one short story a day. So I've been slowly making my way through this. I will probably finish it soon. I don't know if it'll be next week or the week after that. But I did want to share a favorite line from a poem. And this is the line. I love you least in the morning, but only because I love you too much at dusk. I love the concept of kind of waxing and waning your love of somebody throughout the day, but loving somebody too much also is just a really sweet idea. So I'm enjoying that. I'm still reading through the short stories of the best of Richard Matheson. These are kind of horror, sci-fi almost short stories. My favorite one this past couple weeks has been one called The Duel. And it is about a man who is driving down a highway. And I would kind of time it as maybe set in the 70s or 80s. And he discovers that there's a semi-truck driving behind him that is hunting him, trying to murder him. And semi-trucks are one of my biggest fears when it comes to driving on large, fast roads. And I had nightmares about the semi-truck bearing down upon this guy's little car, following him everywhere he goes, speeding up, catching up to him when he least expects it, pulling off the road when he pulls off the road. Oh, it's very suspenseful, very scary. Again, I have to read these in the bright light of the morning because I get nightmares at night. Okay, I'm reading, those are my kind of one-a-day reads. I'm also reading The Orphan of Salt Winds by Elizabeth Brooks. This is a book, it's kind of I would call it maybe a more modern Gothic. It's about an older woman named Virginia who is planning to die. She's 86. She has seen a sign that she feels means that her death is imminent. And so she's kind of wrapping up her life, trying to tie up loose ends, and reflecting on a really strange time in her life when she first moved as an orphan to this house called Salt Winds, which is where she is now. Someone in her family walked out into the marsh that surrounds the Salt Winds and disappeared. And there's a lot of mystery involved with the people surrounding her. So she's kind of reflecting back on that time of her life, planning to die, and her plans get interrupted by the appearance of a young girl at Salt Winds. Almost like how she appeared at Salt Winds as an orphan, kind of at the outset of World War II. So very interesting, very atmospheric. I'm loving it. The way that the mystery kind of unfolds, the way it's plotted out is elegant. So beautiful and so creepy, well written. I predict this will be a 5-star read. Last for currently reads, no, not last, because I also have an audiobook, I forgot. I am reading South Riding by Winifred Holtby. This is the Virago Modern Classics Book of the Month for book club. And I've been meaning to read this anyway, so I thought this was a fine time to read it while other people are reading it, and we can kind of discuss it. This is it's kind of an epic novel about the area of South Riding in Yorkshire, England, in the 1930s. So it covers political intrigue, it covers kind of lots of big things that are happening, big changes, different generations in South Riding, how they're interacting. But also you get some really intimate portraits of the characters living there. And you get to know some deep, dark things about their lives, but also some cozy, quaint things. The character of, I think her name is Sarah Burton, who is a new headmistress at a girls' school in South Riding. She is spunky. She's a feminist. She has great kind of plans for controlling, creating order in this school, making an impact in South Riding. And, pride cometh before the fall. So I foresee that things won't go her way as the book continues. I'm only a couple chapters in. But I love it so far. Very excited about this book. It reminds me kind of a 1930s Middlemarch. So if you liked Middlemarch, you would probably enjoy South Riding. I had high expectations for this because I've read so much about Winifred Holtby, the writer, and she is not letting me down. Winifred is the bomb, which is a good thing. Okay. So the last book that I'm currently reading is an audiobook of To Die But Once by Jacqueline Winspear. This is the 14th book in the Maisie Dobbs mystery series, and it is set in 1940. So we've reached World War II in the series, and it's kind of set around the events of the evacuation of Dunkirk, where British citizens boated across the channel to rescue trapped soldiers on the French beach of Dunkirk. And of course, there is a murder mystery that Maisie has been working through in the meantime as this historical thing is unfolding behind her. And the characters, kind of minor characters around her that are affected by this evacuation. It is, again, just a lovely, lovely book. I love this series. Very consistent. I think I'm going to end up giving it 4 stars again. I'm almost done with it, so I might finish that by the end of today. As for books that I'm planning to pick up this next week, I have My Life in Middlemarch by Rebecca Mead. This is, as far as I can tell, a memoir and part memoir, part literary criticism of this author's experience reading Middlemarch and how life reflects art. I recently rewatched the Middlemarch miniseries so that I could be refreshed, reminded of all the characters and all the events that happen. But if I enjoyed this book, I will probably follow it up with a reread of Middlemarch. I read it for the first time about 10 years ago when I was in college, and remembered liking it. So I'm planning to pick this up. I have technically started it a couple, maybe a month or so ago, and enjoyed the first chapter, but I had to set it aside for other reading projects. So looking forward to this. I'm also queuing up on an audiobook, The #1 Ladies Detective Agency by Alexander McCall Smith. This is a murder mystery. I think it's a murder mystery. It's at least a mystery series. The first in a mystery series about a middle-aged African female detective, which I have not read anything like that before, and I'm so excited for kind of the unique setup, the unique premise for this mystery series. It has come highly recommended by people on BookTube and also by one of the older ladies that I used to volunteer with back before the pandemic hit. So thank you, Ada. I'm finally getting around to the #1 Ladies Detective Agency. So those are the books that I have read in the past couple weeks, books that I am currently reading today, and books that I plan to start or hope to start before next Friday. Tell me what you're reading. What's kind of intrigued you lately about literature, about books? Have you read any of the books that I am reading? And what did you think of them? And remember, there's always another book.